My name is Josh Brahm with Equal Rights Institute, and we're taking a close look at the Reversing Roe documentary. Now, I also want to point out a few other things besides the weird distorted editing tricks in the film. Again, remember the nice B-roll they use of Dr. McNicholas in the beginning. And I could play example after example like that, but for sake of time, let me just point out another contrast with how they depict pro-life men.
She loses a part of herself to someone else. Most of us want that because it's beautiful. It is not that way for everyone. We can sit here self-righteously and decide.
So this actually happens in the very beginning of the documentary. And as soon as I saw this, I was worried. It's like, oh, is this going to be one of these kind of, bias skewed documentaries? Because there's something going on here. So clearly, yes, this looks awkward. But this sort of thing happens all the time during hearings like this. There's this thing that happens if you ever watch Senate hearings, there'll be people giving testimony or giving speeches, and half the room or more are they're walking around and they're talking to each other and they're looking at notes. And do I think it's weird and stupid? Yes, that's uncomfortable to me. But this is obviously a carefully chosen edit to make it look like a bunch of powerful white men won't even listen to the heartfelt woman trying to explain to them why abortion needs to be available. Can anybody claim that this is an unbiased documentary? So take a look at this next clip where they needed B-roll of President Bush Sr. regarding his administration asking the Supreme Court to expand limitations on abortion. Look at the clip that they decided to grab to play under that.
The Bush administration asked the Supreme Court to support further limitations on a woman's right to have an abortion.
Okay, what does President Bush playing golf have to do with his administration telling the Supreme Court they would like to see more limitations put on abortion? It's I can imagine the conversation in the editing bay. Should we get B-roll of President Bush? I don't know, in the White House instructing his staff to do something? No, let's get him playing golf. Why? What does that have to do with him or his administration telling the Supreme Court to do something? Oh, well, it'll make him look like a mean, rich white man. Oh, okay. Come on. I'm so sick of this thing. And both sides do this. And it makes me crazy where both sides are always criticizing whatever is the, opposite party's president because he plays golf. And if it only happened occasionally when maybe, if there's a president who plays way more golf than everybody else before him, fine, maybe. But every presidency in my memory has had this. And I just think it's dumb. If President Obama chooses to use occasional golf days to get some R&R from what is clearly a stressful job that I can't even imagine, I don't really have anything against that. I don't know what that life is like. So in contrast, let's take a look at another example of how choosing what clip they want to play in the editing bay continues pushing the narrative that this whole thing is about mean white men not listening to women. Here's a clip from an old hearing on abortion.
Safe, legal abortions are not available.
All right, will you please sit down or be removed from the...
No, we aren't going to sit down. As soon as a woman gets pregnant and treated like a common criminal, she can't get an abortion. She has to go through having that child, whether she wants it or not.
All right, so this clip, without any context from before or after, makes people more likely to sympathize with the pro-choice protesters. How dare that man tell her to sit down? Okay, well, this is a hearing. There are rules to these kinds of things. If you want to protest in a situation like that, usually you've got to do that outside. And you're not just allowed to grandstand during Senate debates or during oral arguments at the Supreme Court. And if you do, you will be asked to stop. And if you refuse to stop, you're going to be escorted out of the building. That's not a violation of free speech. That's preventing people from using what's called the heckler's veto, where a heckler can actually effectively take someone else's free speech rights away by shouting during an entire speech. So let's take a look at how they edited some audio from the most recent oral arguments in the Supreme Court case about abortion.
I went to the argument and I was struck by the difference between a court with one female justice and a court with 3.
Can I walk through the burden? She has to travel 200 miles to get 2 days of treatment.
How many women are located over 100 miles?
The women could reinforce each other's viewpoint.
There has to be some tie between the benefit and the burden, doesn't there?
I think they were very good at throwing aside all of these specious arguments that the state was making, that really all they cared about was women.
That there are benefits for the ASC and admitting privileges required.
What is the benefit? What evidence is there?
Just said, what's going on here is you are making it more difficult for women to exercise their choice.
This is one of the lowest risk procedures.
And we are going to respect her decision.
This law was targeted at abortion only.
There are many procedures that are much higher risk. Colonoscopies, liposuctions, we could go on and on.
And I have to tell you, they took over that argument.
What it's about is that a woman has a fundamental right to make this choice for herself.
Today, the Supreme Court struck down a Texas law.
All right, so you want to know the easiest way to edit someone into appearing stupid? Show them making a statement, then play someone else asking them a question about that statement, and then don't play the first person's answer. Is it unbiased for the interviewee to call the other side's argument specious, meaning deceptive, misleading? Now, I was actually curious when I watched this about what actually happened at that point in the arguments. I had listened to those oral arguments a long time ago, but it had been a while. So luckily, just like with all Supreme Court cases, the full transcript and audio are available on the Supreme Court website. So I pulled them and I found the relevant section from where they show the pro-life attorney make a statement and then all these justices kind of jumping on him. So what I want to do is just as a kind of an analysis, let's take a look at this case. I'm going to play you the 2 minutes surrounding the section that they highlighted in the documentary, and you be the judge of whether the documentary was edited in a biased way.
Well, and what Casey said is the substantial obstacle test examines access to abortion. Now, if a law had no health benefits, presumably it would be irrational, but even their expert, and this is at JA 256 and 258, acknowledged that some doctors do believe that there are benefits for the ASC and admitting privileges required.
What is the benefit of the medical, the 2 pills that you take? What is the benefit of having an ambulatory surgical center to take 2 pills when there's no surgical procedure at all involved?
2 responses, Justice Ginsburg. First, the complication rates are greater. When there's a complication rate from a drug-induced abortion, then a surgical abortion is needed as a follow-up. In the first lawsuit—
On the complication, that complication is likely to arise near the woman's home, much more likely to arise near her home, which the 30-mile has nothing to do with.
Well, first of all, the 2 travel distances, that was about the drug protocol. That's a different part of the bill. That was in petitioner's first lawsuit, and they have not raised any challenge to that in this lawsuit. In any event,
I'm not talking about the prior lawsuit. I'm talking about this lawsuit. You need to have access to a hospital within 30 miles. 30 miles of what? 30 miles of the surgical center when the woman lives at a much greater distance, and if she's going to go to any hospital, it will be in her local community, not near the surgical center.
Of course, most abortions are surgical abortions in the state.
Well, I'm asking you just about the medical.
That's right. And also—
I can't imagine. What is the benefit of having a woman take those pills in an ambulatory surgical center when there is no surgery involved?
Well, there would be surgery and a complication, and all abortion clinics in Texas perform surgical abortions, and that's why petitioners probably didn't defend that aspect of the judgment.
Now, you might not agree with the pro-life lawyer's arguments, and that's fine. But was he constantly getting stumped by the Supreme Court justices? No. He was interrupted a lot, which, to be fair, that's really common in Supreme Court oral arguments. This is not a good model for productive dialogue. It's a totally different situation. The point is, the documentary was carefully edited to make you believe that the justices killed it with their arguments, and nobody would know better unless they did what I did, which was go straight to the source and listen to it in context. That's just lame. Regardless of what side of the debate does this kind of thing, that's lame.